Good evening, Winnipeg. Good evening, Manitoba. And for all those joining us live this evening on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good evening, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve post-game show. The losing streak is now 4 games for the Winnipeg Jets. They did a great job of socially distancing themselves on the scoreboard away from the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers with a comfortable, easy, embarrassing 6-1 victory over the Winnipeg Jets. Alongside Ezra Ginsburg, alongside Dave Minuk, who joins us from the press box at the arena. I am your host, Drew Mindell. We welcome you to the Illegal Curve post-game show. Gentlemen, on Saturday night after the loss to the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Josh Morrissey said, was asked, what do the Jets need to do? And he said succinctly, they can't let it get to 4 games in a row, 4 losses in a row. They need to figure things out. Well, I can assure you that in the 48 hours between Saturday night and tonight, they did not figure things out. Probably the worst defeat of the season, even worse than the loss in Montreal, where they got blown out, because that game you could just chalk it up to, that was just a bad game against Montreal. This one is absolutely embarrassing for the Winnipeg Jets on home ice when they should be desperate, and they have absolutely nothing to show for their effort tonight.
Yeah, absolutely, Drew. And, we said it after the game against, the Leafs that, the Jets had to come out with one of their best performances of the season. And tonight was obviously not that. And, it's kind of interesting, what happens in the first period, because, the Jets and Oilers were trading chances, and I thought the Jets, for the most part, with the new lines, right? And I'm sure we're going to get into those later, but, I thought Scheifele, Kopp, and Appleton were playing really well. Overall, I thought they had a pretty good game. And then, just everything falls apart at the end of that first period. And obviously, Leon Draisaitl wins a battle in the corner there, gets it out to Adam Larson, and makes a nice pass. Alex Chiasson's goal, that's just a nice one-timer. Could the coverage have been a little tighter? Maybe. And then the second goal, obviously, there's some miscommunication between Kyle Connor and Blake Wheeler. And then obviously that leads to just, turnover after turnover, right? Connor McDavid gets the first goal, and then it was on from there. But, you go into the second period, just it was kind of like more of the same. And, when you think about, these two teams and the fact that they could play very easily in the first round of the playoffs, and now Edmonton has passed the Jets, Dave, for second in the North Division. I mean, we just continue to see the same things, night after night, especially on this homestand. But I'm talking about more so between the Jets and the Oilers. They just quite simply can't shut down Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, right? And Alex Chiasson, for that matter, because I believe he has 4 goals now against the Jets. But it was just one of those games where you just can't afford to make those types of mistakes, and the Jets did that time after time, right? Like, again, Kyle Connor, his pass is picked off Connor McDavid. At that point the game's already over, but you just can't do that against a team like this, guys. So overall, just a really disappointing game. And the game coming up on Wednesday night, I mean, you just, at this point, I think you just don't want to go 0-4 on this homestand, right? Like, well, if they end up losing 5 games on this homestand, I mean, not that if you win 1 game out of 5, that's not exactly going to make up for the previous 4 games. But at this point, you just have to stop the bleeding, boys.
I mean, agreed that you have to stop the bleeding, but I mean, fundamentally, the problems aren't just with the results. It's effort, it's execution, it's strategy. There was no box you could tick for the Winnipeg Jets tonight that said this should give you hope. The first 5 minutes of the game, they were good. The first 5 minutes, where it was sort of, back and forth, a little bit of pond hockey that was entertaining. The Jets had some opportunities. Mike Smith made the saves. But as soon as the Jets faced any adversity at all tonight, Dave, you were there. You watched it up close and personal. The wilting and the lack of any fortitude has to be troubling, given what we saw tonight from the Winnipeg Jets.
It was just also like execution. Like, what were they thinking with the dump-ins? I mean, Mike
same
Smith
thing we talked about on Saturday.
That's what I mean. I mean, how do you not learn your lesson? Mike Smith is one of the best goaltenders at handling the puck. And every time they dump the puck in ineffectively, I mean, again, you lose Nikolai Ehlers. We haven't talked about that, but you lose Nikolai Ehlers for the remainder of the regular season. They're hopeful he's going to come back for the playoffs / the beginning of the playoffs. He's your zone entry specialist, and you see what happens when you don't have one, because let me tell you, it was not pretty. I mean, dumping that puck in the way they did ineffectively. I mean, they just had no, and I made a comment about that on Twitter, and people were like, why not put it in the corners and force their D to play it? Because Mike Smith is just too effective, and he has too much time, and to me it was like it was like watching, it was like redundancy. I couldn't understand it. Like once it starts to not work for you, you got to kind of change things up, because it's just not successful. And again, like I said, like even on the first goal, I mean, what were the defense? Everybody's standing around watching. I mean, Forbert and Pullman Forbert follows Pullman. I mean, Pullman's already behind the net, which means there's nobody in front of the net. What's Derek Forbert doing? I mean, Derek Forbert did not have a good game once again. And we've talked about how Forbert has been coming back to earth for quite some time now, and really is better suited to being a third pairing defenseman. And it's funny. It's one of those things. It's not his fault. He's pressed into service in that role, but at the end of the day, I mean, you got to be able to survive. And on the play, Kyle Connor, and that they said it was funny because they said Connor McDavid's goal was unassisted, and I said, well, Kyle Connor deserved at least a pretty good primary assist on that one. So this was a stinker right across the board. I mean, I don't really know that you can't really lay the blame on quite a few of these players tonight.
Well,
and I just wanted to. Sorry, go ahead, Drew.
I was just going to quickly. The difference between a stinker, like you saw tonight, and the stinker that you've seen other times in the year is the context. I mean, you've lost the first three on home ice on this homestand against playoff teams, against the other two teams that you think you're fighting with to be on the top spot of the North Division. Well, I mean, you've absolutely been outclassed. 2 games in a row by the Oilers and 2 games in a row by the Leafs. You've been, I mean, not even, like you're showing a good fight and you're on the losing end of a good effort. Just an absolute outclassing by the Oilers tonight, by the Leafs on Thursday and on Saturday, and by the Oilers 2 Saturdays ago. Like the lack of any answers from the Winnipeg Jets has got to be what's as troubling as the scoreboard, because really top to bottom, there's not any positives you can really take from this team.
Yeah, and what I was going to mention is the fourth goal. Like we've talked, I mean, we could go through all the goals. I don't think a lot of the Jets fans watching the post-game show necessarily want to go through all these goals, guys. But, Dave singled out Derek Forbort, and, a perfect example was the fourth goal, right? Like you have to know, with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Leon Draisaitl on the ice, like you just can't afford, if you're going to pinch and try to make that type of play, like it's situational awareness, right? And like I just didn't think the Jets had that. And I agree with you, Drew. Like, there aren't a lot of positives to take out of this game. Like, do you think anybody really on the Jets cares about Scheifele's power play goal that made it 4-1? Like, no, it doesn't, or 5-1, whatever it was. Like, it's meaningless. The game's over at that point. And, I thought, again, we talk about, the high danger chances a lot, and the Jets actually had 10-4 at even strength, which I don't even know in a 6-1 game how that's even possible. But this was another game in which I thought, like, it just seemed, guys, like the Jets had to do so much to generate a little bit of offense, right? And we've talked about it. It's 5 goals in the last 4 games for the Jets, right? Like for a team that has this much offensive firepower, Dave mentioned it. Yeah, Ehlers is out. He's going to be out for the rest of the regular season, and the Jets are hopeful he's going to be back for the playoffs. But you've still got a lot of other guys that are dangerous, right? Like Pierre-Luc Dubois. I know there were a lot of eyes on him going into this game. Like I thought Dubois was, working hard out there. I thought he had a good game. Jansen Harkins was noticeable tonight, right? Like we saw him early in the first period drawing a penalty, and then he was crashing into Mike Smith, right? Like I thought Christian Vesalainen was showing some hustle there in the third period, but like at the end of the day, guys, it's the guys that get paid the big bucks that are going to have to really step up here, right? Like it's Scheifele, it's Connor, it's Wheeler, and in a game like this, like there just wasn't enough from those guys.
You're absolutely right. Good evening to everybody joining us in the chat. Good evening to everyone just joining us. I am Drew Mandel. Dave Minuk is at the arena. Ezra Ginsburg is at the bottom of the screen. This is the Illegal Curve post-game show. We're talking about the Winnipeg Jets. They drop a 6-1 defeat at home to the Edmonton Oilers. Nice to see so many of you joining us on this Monday evening. Hit the thumbs up button, smash the like button, subscribe if you already aren't subscribed to our YouTube channel. Get alerted each and every time we go live here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show and the Illegal Curve post-game show. You know, as you mentioned the effort that it took for the Jets to try and generate anything. It started in their own zone. I mean, you know, the Jets were fighting tooth and nail just to get a breakout, just to get any sort of speed going through the neutral zone. And that's what this team is based on. They're based on speed through the neutral zone. They're based on transition plays. The number of times throughout the course of this game where the Jets were hemmed into their own zone and they couldn't make they couldn't get a clean breakout if their lives depended on it was really, another one of the most troubling parts in a game filled with troubling aspects. You know, it doesn't matter how much speed you have up front. It doesn't matter how much talent you have up front. If you can't get the puck out of your own zone, and it's the 5-man effort that's necessary to get the puck out of their own zone just wasn't there. The Oilers were winning all the battles. There's a reason why the Winnipeg Jets lost this game, and it's because the Edmonton Oilers absolutely, pardon my French, shit kicked them.
Yeah, and the Oilers are a very talented team. Like, you know, you can't take anything away from them. Sure, they have some, you know, flaws on their team, right? Like, we know that, you know, at the end of the day, if you shut down Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, you have a pretty good chance of beating the Oilers, but nobody is doing that this year. Like, if you actually step back and you think about what McDavid is doing this year, guys, it's really incredible. But you're right, Drew. Like, they were outplayed in most areas of this game. Like, we talked about it. Like, there were some parts of this game that maybe you would like, but not many. Like 95% of this game, if you're Paul Maurice and the Jets coaching staff and players for that matter, they're not liking, you know, what they were putting out tonight. But you know, we talk about the breakouts, but it's also there's been something about this Jets team over the last few weeks that is very off, very wrong to me. And, you know, I know a few people on our Twitter account were saying that there's going to be a players only meeting. Yeah, that might be the case. And I'm sure the players are not happy about this, but like when I watch this team now, like we mentioned demoralizing a couple of nights ago, Dave, but like this looks like just a very fragile team. And I agree with Drew, right? Like you go down 2 goals in the first period, but you're still in it. Like that game is not over by any stretch of the imagination. And then Connor McDavid obviously makes it 3-0, you know, after an unfortunate play, and the game's over at that point, right? Like, you know, you're not coming back when you're down 3 goals. You just got that feeling, right? Like you could see it, like the snowball was happening. And so, yeah, like there's a lot of areas of the game. And I agree with you, Drew. That's what's the most concerning to me from, you know, watching this team all season long. You know, this does not, if you watched the entire game of this Jets team versus the Jets, let's say 2 weeks ago, or even, you know, 10 days ago, like it looks like a team that is just, the only word I could really find to use is fragile.
Yeah, I think Ezzy's absolutely right. And I think, like I said, this is one of those games that you're thinking to yourself, remember, boys, what did we say? This was supposed to be a game that you were supposed to come about, play your game, you know, all those cliche things that players tend to say, and yet they didn't. And to Ezzy's point, it was funny because I was like, the expected goals, the high danger chances, we're actually all in favor of the Jets, even though it was a 6-1 game.
Yeah.
But overall, I mean, you're watching this game and you're thinking to yourself, like, I think Ezzy's 100% right. I mean, look how clean the breakout passes were from the Oilers defense into the neutral zone and allowing their players to gain the Jets zone with speed. How many passes were in the Jets' feet, were behind them? I mean, it was terrible. Honestly, it was pathetic. And so you're watching this game and you're thinking to yourself, how can this team generate when we can't even make a decent breakout pass and they can't get out of their zone cleanly? So to me, unless you resolve that, then you're not gonna be able to do anything. And so look, have they been a good team? Sure. Do they have a good record? Yeah, you slipped to the 3rd. That's not great, but you're still comfortably in the playoffs. But that doesn't matter. If your team is, you know, going to the dumpster, it's not going to help you to be able to say, well, a month ago we were real good. So look, they got to practice tomorrow and they're going to have to work on some fundamentals, because to me, I mean, what they're doing right now is not good. And again, people are saying we should bring the Moose up. Well, the Moose are playing pretty good hockey right now. You might want to bring up the Moose. I watched that game at the Iceplex earlier this afternoon, and let me tell you, there's some players on the Moose who could perhaps come in here and instill a little bit of life, a little jump into this Jets roster.
Well, at the very least, the Moose players will give you a good effort, and that's what certainly it was lacking from the Winnipeg Jets tonight. In addition to success, is the effort hasn't been there at all during this homestand, and that certainly is troubling as well. I mean, I'm reading some of the post game comments coming out of Jets players. Paul Stastny, this is according to our buddy Scott Billick. Paul Stastny saying that tonight was a long time coming for the Winnipeg Jets. He called it embarrassing. Stastny essentially saying they've gotten away with a lot of stuff this season. They've won during that. Says it's everybody on the team that's been cheating the game. Well, when you cheat the game, you can only get away with that for so long, and you certainly can't cheat the game against Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. I mean, it's Connor McDavid coming into the game. He's killed you all year round. How does Connor McDavid get basically not one but two breakaways almost on back-to-back shifts? It's unconscionable. It's an attention to detail that is just absent. I don't know who the Winnipeg Jets are fooling and who they think they're fooling when they play with that lack of discipline. But no kidding, Connor McDavid's going to get a hat trick, and no kidding, Connor McDavid's going to get 2 points a game against you when you're not focused on him and you think you can cheat against Connor McDavid. Well, give your head a shake. He's Connor McDavid, for God's sakes, guys. It's your only job against the Oilers is to shut down McDavid and Draisaitl, and the Jets. Not that they can't do it. They can't get within a country mile of doing it.
Yeah, and it's really troubling. I agree with you. Like, strategically, you'd have to think, and again, like, everyone knows what Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are capable of, right? Like, we're not just talking about in this division or this year. Like, this has been years that these two guys have been dominating, and it's not easy to do. And I think, when you listen to players and you listen to coaches, they even kind of half jokingly say, like, you're not going to really stop them. You're just hoping that they only get a goal, right? Or a point. But in this type of game, like, it's one thing, back to Drew's point earlier, right? Like, it's one thing if the Oilers badly outplayed you and you got your chances and you were playing well. And, I think Paul Stastny's comment makes a lot of sense, cheating the game, saying that, sometimes, they're just not really getting back to their game. And you hear that a lot, right, Dave? Like, not just the Jets, you hear that with the Moose. And really, they aren't playing their game, right? Like, I don't know what game they're actually playing because it just looks disjointed at times, right? Like, it just kind of looks like, and I realize, there are a lot of new forward line combinations. Like, I get that, but every team goes through that. Like, if you think about it, guys, in this season, the Jets have been relatively injury free, right? It's really only, the last few weeks that the Jets are dealing with these injuries to, it was Wheeler first and now Lowry and now Ehlers. But for the majority of the season, they were completely healthy. And that's why, you go back a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks before Wheeler was injured, right? And we kept talking about how many games was it? 9 games, 10 games, 11 games with the exact same lineup. So you're not going to use that as an excuse, but there's no doubt that, the Jets were already going through probably the most adversity they'd faced all year after losing the 3 games. Now you've lost 4 games. And now the way you've lost this game, I agree with Drew. Like, it's embarrassing. You were kicked for sure. And, you got to stop this. Like, you can't let this continue. You're running out of games here. Like, you're running out of runway, boys. Like, the playoffs are starting in 3 weeks. So at the very least, you have to start putting out some better performances there. Obviously, you need to get wins, but it goes back to what I said a couple of nights ago. I'm still concerned with the lack of goal scoring on this team because this is not something we've seen all year long. Now it just seems like, the Jets are, it's 1 goal, 2 goals every game here.
It's the goal scoring. It's also the opportunities or the lack thereof. There's no consistent zone time, Dave, from this Jets team, and nothing that happened in the third period tonight counts. So don't talk. Nobody should be talking about the third period as something that you can, take some solace in.
For the record, Edmonton was still pressing in the third period and still finishing their checks.
Yeah, well,
I'm just saying, like, it's not as if Edmonton sat back. Like, you could say that, but Edmonton didn't sit back. I was watching this game, like I said, from up here in the press box. And I'm watching Edmonton. I'm thinking to myself, they're still going for it. You know, there were still plays where they're still going for it. Now, look, they're not sending 5 guys deep, but the point is, you know, I saw Darnell Nurse finish a check on Josh Morrissey at the Jets bench, and Morrissey didn't like it, tried to give him a little stick swing at him. And there was a couple of plays where the Oilers are just pushing. And I think to myself, like, you're up 6-1. Hey, maybe they want Connor McDavid to win someone $100,000 or $1 million. But like I said, it wasn't a team that was going to quit. They weren't stopping, they weren't taking their foot off the gas because they know, look, you can't afford to just sit back and relax, even though they know this game is over. You've got to keep doing the right things. And even if you're not trying to pour it on and embarrass another team, you know, if that results in a goal, well, that's on the Jets. It's not on the Oilers.
Well, you know, it's the accountability, and that was lacking from the Winnipeg Jets perspective tonight. It's been lacking from the Winnipeg Jets for the last 4 games. Dave Tippett behind the Oilers bench, you know, it demands accountability first and foremost in his own zone. Look, the Oilers defense, I believe, is better than the Jets defense, but it's not like the Oilers have a juggernaut of a defense back there.
Sorry, let me just quickly interject. Did anybody notice Dmitry Kulikov was even in the game? I'm not joking. I leaned over to our friend Philip Paul Martin from the Native Hockey News, and I said, Philip, I think it was in the 3rd period, I think was when I noticed Dmitry Kulikov for the first time. And I knew he was in the game, but I still didn't even notice him.
But I think
he's wearing a weird number. What was he wearing? 70 or something? It was a weird number.
Yeah, it was something unusual.
I
didn't notice him. Though,
I thought Kulikov was perfectly fine. I mean, he's exactly what you would want from Dmitry Kulikov. You know, getting the puck out of your zone quickly. I mean, the Jets certainly were easy to play against tonight, so it really doesn't matter who was playing defense for the Edmonton Oilers in a great respect. But you know, the accountability, like when the Oilers took that, even the 2-0 lead. 3-0 for sure, but even 2-0. I'm thinking to myself, fragile Winnipeg Jets team. Dave Tippett coached Oilers team. You know, it was a recipe for a bad night just with those 2 factors, because a Dave Tippett led Oilers team is going to be defensively accountable first and foremost. You know, from starting in their own zone, and that's, you can see that. And the Oilers, you know, to my previous comment about not having a great defense on paper, but when the 5-man unit plays solid defense, like we saw from the Oilers tonight, that's why their breakouts were clean. That's why they were gaining the Jets zone with ease. The Jets are just a tire fire in all aspects of their game. Anytime they're desperate to get the puck out, they have there's nobody skating the puck out of the Jet zone tonight from a defensive perspective. There was just, it was just almost inexplicable.
It was disjointed at best. I mean, they were just, like I said, it was all over the place. And you know, to me, it's all about adjustments, and that's really what you need to see from this Jets team. And again, I really just want to go back to that idea of the way they dumped the puck into the Oilers zone. I mean, when you saw that Mike Smith is killing every attempt to try and get any traction, then why are you still doing it? You know, I mean, again, what's the definition of insanity? Trying the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, you're not going to get a different result. And you know that Mike Smith is too good. Like this is the part that just really confused me, because I was like, it seemed emblematic of what was kind of plaguing the Jets, was this inability to adjust their game in game or even in intermission to account. And again, it's not as if they don't have a pre-scout. It's not as if they didn't know that Mike Smith is a good goaltender at handling the puck. But at the same time, like, again, okay, maybe you think you can do it, but it wasn't working. So change something. And again, you don't have Adam Lowry. You don't have Nikolai Ehlers. I'm not going to minimize that. Nikolai Ehlers is probably the best winger on the team, and Adam Lowry is a good defensive center. So, I mean, those are 2 very important players. You can't pretend like they're not key pieces that are missing. I'm not going to minimize their loss. That's big, huge for this team. But at the same time, you still have some other good players, and you still have guys that could have stepped up in the absence of those guys. And again, I'm not blaming guys like Jansen Harkins. I thought Jansen Harkins had a good effort, to Ezzy's point earlier in the show. I thought Christian Vesalainen, you know, again, after an absence was okay, you know, with not a tremendous amount of opportunity, but, you know, it was okay. Yeah. But I mean, again, to the point we've talked about, this was a game that Mark Scheifele needed to step up on. It was a game Blake Wheeler needed to be up and play a big one. Kyle Connor had to have a big role. I mean, Pierre-Luc Dubois, those are the guys who make the big money, or the guys who want to make the big money, have to step up. And, you know, I thought it was the right decision to pull Connor Hellebuyck. I actually said before the end of the second period, I said I'd be shocked if he was still in the net to start the third, because get him out of there. I mean, there's just no value to keeping him in the net at that point.
Yeah, he wasn't great, but it certainly, I mean, of all the problems the Jets have had as of late, Connor Hellebuck would be fairly low down on my list. It's just the decision making, even the lineup decision making. I mean, I just don't get it. So Jordy Ben plays on Thursday night against Toronto, and he plays 11 minutes. Okay, fine, whatever. You're trying to see what you have there. Then you pull him out of the lineup on Saturday to put Logan Stanley back in. And then Stanley is out of the lineup tonight to put Ben back in. I just don't understand what is the decision-making that's going on with this roster even before the game starts.
Yeah, and I agree. And you got to think that Logan Stanley is going to be back in the game on Wednesday night, right? Like, I think we would all agree. We don't know, obviously. Paul Maurice and the coaching staff.
What's the point? If that's the case, and it very well might be the case.
It's clearly a rotation. We've talked about. Well, I mean, look what's happening. You just said it, right? Like, you're seeing one defenseman go in, one defenseman come out. That's a rotation. It's not because Paul Maurice isn't taking Logan Stanley. I thought Logan Stanley was good on Saturday night. So I actually thought he was going to stay in the lineup. I was surprised that Jordy Ben was in there. And we know what Jordy Ben is. You mentioned it. Like, he's going to play 10 to 15 minutes. He's going to be a third pairing guy. And I think, guys, something, worth noting here is that in the third period, Dylan DeMello was up with Josh Morrissey again, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if, Morrissey and DeMello start the game, and possibly finish the game Wednesday night versus the Oilers. But kind of going back to what we were talking about before, boys, like with the, the dump ins and, not playing to, Mike Smith's strength. And Dave's right. He's one of the best puck handling goalies in the league. And we see, when you see a team that doesn't traditionally dump the puck in a lot, that means that they're having trouble, generating any offense. Like, and that's what's, again, we talked about, this kind of idea that, the Jets just don't look like the same team that we're used to seeing, right? And it just doesn't. It seems like a lot of these errors are because they're forcing. Like, that's what I wanted to say. It seems like to me, because the Jets aren't playing their game, they're not generating a lot of those good scoring chances. They're forcing things. And I accidentally said it was Kyle Connor on the first goal. It was Pierre-Luc Dubois. Sorry, the second goal, Pierre-Luc Dubois was the one who tried to get the puck back to Blake Wheeler, and that led to Connor McDavid's goal. Yeah. And I thought Dubois' game was pretty good. We talked about on Saturday night against Toronto, he was really strong. Like, Dubois is the type of player that rises to the challenge against the good teams, right? Like Toronto and Edmonton, but it's not one or two players. And I think, getting back to, Edmonton, Darnell Nurse is having a career year. Like Ethan Bear, I've mentioned this on the show before. I really like Bear's game. Like Tyson Bear, he's going to talk about guys cashing in, right? Like, we know Andrew Kopp's going to cash in. Tyson Barrie bet on himself 1 year, $2 million, I believe. He's probably going to get $5 or $6 million a year on his next contract, getting a lot of those points on the power play, right? But the point is, this Oilers team is playing really well as a 5-man unit. Like, they're doing to the Jets what they want to do to the Oilers, right? And there's a lot of troubling things here. Like, when it's one thing when you don't have one scoring line going, but they're going to have to figure this out, right, guys? Because Ehlers is going to miss at least the next 8 games. Like, we know that. So who's going to step up and fill that offensive void? Like, I think Mason Appleton had a pretty good game, right? Like, we saw him get a chance on the power play. Like, that's what's probably, one thing.
Appleton was the best forward for the Jets.
Yeah, and you can't point to one player, right, guys? Like, you can't point and say this guy's got to be better or that guy's got to be better. It's a lot of guys that have to be better.
Yeah. It's the whole. I want to see somebody from the Jets take over a shift or 2 shifts, just where they can have some sustained time in the opponent's zone, and there's nothing there at all. There's just it's one and done. The every time the Jets,
yes,
they fight. They fight
one and done. That's a great way. That what the Jets are, the way they're playing right now is they get one chance and that's it. And you're 100% right. One and done.
Yeah, and that's not sustainable. I mean, I know that the Jets are not the cycle team that they were in 2018. That's not their modus operandi for this year's team. But you just can't be that easy to play against, where you come in, you maybe get a shot from the outside. Everything's from the outside. There's nothing from I mean, I don't know who was counting high danger chances, because that's garbage as far as I'm concerned. Everything was from the outside for the Winnipeg Jets tonight, certainly when the game still mattered. After the first 5 minutes of the first period, that was it for in terms of anything from the slot area for the Jets. I want to see one of the Jets' best players, and frankly, that's Mark Scheifele, because we know what Blake Wheeler makes in terms of his salary, but Blake Wheeler is not able to take over a game anymore. He just isn't. I think we've seen that this year, that Blake Wheeler is obviously not the player that he was 2 years ago. And the contract being the contract, that's not his fault. That's the contract that was handed to him, and we'll put that aside for now. But I need to see a Jets forward take over a game, especially because the only guy who can maybe take over a shift every now and then was Nikolai Ehlers. He's going to be out for the rest of the regular season. I need to see Mark Scheifele be the man. Mark Scheifele against the Oilers and the Leafs, the last two games, had an opportunity to prove that he deserves to be in the same conversation as McDavid and Matthews. And with all due respect to Mark, he failed that test the last 4 games in a row.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question about it. And especially after everything that had happened on Saturday, with his benching in the second period, and with all the talk about, he said he came in yesterday, I mean, it was an off day, but he worked on his game. Drew, I think you're absolutely right. I think the fact is that, Mark Scheifele wants to be mentioned in the conversation with the top centers in the NHL. And forget about the defense. I mean, the whole point is you've got to be able to take over a hockey game. And to your point, take over some shifts, take over a period, do something, put the team on your back.
Yeah.
Do what you did when you were scoring all those goals in the playoffs against Nashville. That's what you need to see from Mark Scheifele. And that's not what's being seen right now. And I think that, to me, is something that's kind of really important for the Jets top center to keep, to kind of get going again. And we'll see what happens there. But, like I said, this team can't go without Mark Scheifele really going. And if he's not going to really go, this team isn't going to go anywhere.
Right. And I agree with what you're both saying. And I think, it's hard to argue with what Drew said about, kind of Scheifele failing that test against the other two great centers, the top 2 centers, let's be honest, in the NHL, and McDavid and Matthews and Draisaitl. So let's call it, the top 3 centers just happen to be in the division for the Jets, but are also the top 3 centers, in the entire league, right? So it's I agree with you, Drew, and to Dave's point, I mean, you don't want to put everything on Mark Scheifele, because Scheifele obviously has been, the Jets' best forward all year long with Nikolai Ehlers, but it's asking how much. You can't ask too much of a Mason Appleton coming up on the first line, right? Like, you can't expect Appleton, to score a goal every game. Like, that's just unrealistic. Scheifele's obviously going to be the driver of that line. And, speaking of that, guys, like, I do expect a much better effort on Wednesday, and not just effort, I think result. Like, this Jets team, I think this next game, and it feels like we keep saying this, right? Because we said this in the second game against the Leafs, and then we said this, going into this game. But something's got to give here, right? Like, we talked about, a players only meeting. Like, sure, that's fine. You can talk this out, but 4 losses in a row, and it's the way they've lost. It's not just the 4 losses in a row. There have been some real stinkers here on this homestand.
Hold that thought, Ezzy. Why you think that there's some optimism for Wednesday's game? Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about the looking forward. Talk about why Ezzy thinks that there might be some optimism, or
I'm
why
just a glass half full type of guy, Drew.
You are a glass half full kind of guy.
Just make sure.
And I want to shave my beard off.
Smash that like button during the commercials, guys. Come on.
There you go. Well, so we're going to take a quick break here. You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms. While you're here, be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. That's all we ask of you for the Illegal Curve post-game show. We'll be right back.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Welcome back to the Illegal Curve post-game show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you on this Monday evening, talking about the Winnipeg Jets' defeat to the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm getting my days confused. To the Edmonton Oilers, a 6-1 shellacking at home. The embarrassing homestand continues for the Winnipeg Jets. And before the break, we were talking about the Wednesday game, the rematch coming up on Wednesday, and why anyone should feel as though there's some optimism for the Winnipeg Jets to come out of the doldrums that they've been in for the past 2 weeks. I really don't see it. I'd be shocked if the Winnipeg Jets come out on Wednesday and are victorious or anything along those lines. I think that it's going to take this team getting out of Winnipeg, getting back on the road to maybe playing against the Montreal Canadiens or an Ottawa Senators team that to get out of this lull that they're in, because right now I just don't see any light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, that's depressing, Drew, but let me try to
That's my opinion.
I know. But, the way they've played on this homestand, I mean, especially tonight, yeah, it's not looking promising. But I think, what you have to remember is the Jets aren't the Buffalo Sabres, right? Like this isn't like a bottom feeding team. Like the Jets are a very talented group. And there are a few reasons why I think the Jets result will be better. Who knows if they're going to win? I mean, unless you're, psychic, you have no idea what's going to happen on Wednesday night. But I mean, there's no way the Jets are going to turn over the puck as much as they did tonight. Like tonight was I at some, like on the sixth goal there, like I actually felt bad for Connor Hellebuyck, and I was watching the game with Naomi live, and I'm thinking to myself, like, this is the reigning Vezina Trophy winner. And what Connor McDavid was doing, first off, there was no Jets player in sight of McDavid on that sixth goal. And what he was doing, like his stick handling, and Hellebuyck even got a piece of it. But it's just not fair. Like for any goalie, it doesn't matter who you are. You could have 5 goalies in net, and Connor McDavid's probably going to get that puck past you. But I think so. That's a few things. I think Hellebuck's response, we know, he's usually better. When he has a stinker. And then I do think, Logan Stanley will probably go in, and the Jets, I think, have to be motivated, and have to want to redeem themselves after that extremely poor performance. Like, how many times are you going to have to hear someone say that was embarrassing? Like, at the end of the day, guys, those are just words. Like, the Jets have to go out there on Wednesday night, and they're going to have to prove something to themselves. Forget everybody else. Like, Drew mentioned this, like, Mark Scheifele has gone up, and again, hockey's a team game, but it's also a game about the stars, and he's gone up head to head with some of the best centers in this world. And, the other centers have badly outplayed him. And, the Jets have been badly outplayed by the other two teams that are ahead of them in the standings. So I do think the game on Wednesday night is going to be very important. And, if they continue to play like this, you might be right, Drew. I mean, they might just lose this game and then they're going to go out on the road and maybe they're going to find their game. But if I'm the Jets, I don't want to wait till that road trip to find my game. I want it to start on Wednesday.
Oh, of course, it needs to. It needs to start on Wednesday. I'm not. The thing is, I don't know that they're in the position mentally right now, and given how fragile they are right now, that they're going to be able to flip that switch come Wednesday night against another Oilers team. The Oilers are always sitting back and saying, "Well, look, we'll just play like we did against them tonight," and the Jets didn't put up any difficulty in us doing so. And we have Connor McDavid and we have Leon Draisaitl. And so we'll just keep doing what we're doing. Until the Jets can prove to me that they're going to show some fight, I have no reason to believe that they're going to turn things around for Wednesday night, Dave.
Well, I did see a comment from someone saying, bring in Leon Galanke, who's technically actually on the taxi squad, but he's injured. He's actually dealing with an injury. He didn't finish the game on Saturday for the Manitoba Moose, so he's not available to play for the Jets, despite the fact that he was on the taxi squad. That's really just a paper transaction because they had to call Dominic Toninato and they had to call Christian Vesalainen up. So they needed to fill a space. So that went to Leon Galanke. Luke Green, by the way, who's also on the taxi squad, is not with the Moose even. So that just to show you that sometimes those taxi squad guys are essentially cardboard cutouts essentially at this point in the season. But anyway, so to your point, Drew, look, at the end of the day, it's incumbent on the big stars to step up their games. That's what it comes down to. I mean, again, like I said, you're going to see guys like Jansen Harkins. I like Jansen Harkins. I like whenever he plays it in game, you see his intelligence, you see his vision. Again, like I said, I personally think
he's always skating, Dave. Always skating.
He's a smart, and he's just a smart player. And so to me, and he's a hard worker. And like I said, I've said this for as long as I've covered the Jets and the Moose, that I don't know that you'll ever find someone who's more focused, more intense than Jansen Harkins. Again, like I said, when we used to do Manitoba Moose post-game shows, and we do them down in the bowels of the arena, but we would do them near the Moose room, and he would come out and he would be stretching beside us while we were working out, and while we were doing our post-game media, I should say. Sorry.
And you certainly weren't working out.
No, definitely not working out. But the point is that he's a type of player who's again, I think if you give him an opportunity, if you'll recall last year when he was put on the wing with Blake Wheeler in the second line, it doesn't look out of place. I mean, he's not as fast, obviously, some of the guys there, but he's a good player. He's an effective player. And to me, here's a guy who could earn himself some more opportunity. Mason Appleton. I tweeted it out this morning. I thought to myself, obviously injuries necessitated what happened, but talk about a hell of a story. He was a fourth line winger for the Manitoba Moose in his rookie season, worked his way up to the first line, and now he's on the Moose, I should say, and now he's on the first line of the Winnipeg Jets. So, I mean, there's another guy who's worked his ass off to get there, and again, he's going to give you an honest effort. Are there other players who could be coming from the Manitoba Moose? I mean, they've got 2 more games. They play tomorrow against Stockton, and then they play again on Thursday. Might we see Ville Heinola? Ville Heinola was paired with Declan Chisholm today. They actually look pretty good. I asked Pascal Vincent about them, so if you want to hear about that, go to a little site called leocurve.com, read my Moose post-game wrap-up. You can read that. You can hear all about that game, and you can hear what he thought about those guys and Johnny Kovacevic and Dylan Sandberg. People ask me whether guys like that should be called up. To be honest with you, I'm inclined to leave them where they are. Sometimes they make mistakes. And again, it cost. There was a pinch by Dylan Sandberg today, and then Johnny Kovacevic was left alone on a 2-on-1. They got burned. Again, in a game for the Moose, it's not a big deal. A game for the Jets, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for these guys. And Pascal Vincent uses it as a teaching moment. So that to me is one of those things that people sometimes have to factor in, is that these guys, a lot of these guys, especially the defensive prospects, are where they need to be. So I know you want to see them, especially because you're frustrated when you see what's happening with the Jets and the defense. But you got to remember, sometimes these guys are young players, so be aware of that.
Let's head to Winnipeg Jets head coach Paul Maurice. We'll listen to what the Jets coach had to say after tonight's 6-1 defeat at the hands of the Edmonton Oilers.
Coming here over the last couple of games, over the last 10 or 15 games, he said he sees some cheats in your players' games right across the board, and feels like you need to get back to the fundamentals. Do you agree with that assessment?
I think there have been things that we'd probably gotten away with in a style of game that was played by the opponents and by us. And that's true of a big chunk of the regular season. And it's played equally by both teams. So I think what was true of our game was also true of our opponents' games. And then, there was a gear change. And it happens at different times over an 82 game schedule. We missed the gear change coming off the road, and now you're not. We had 4 of those pucks tonight that we need to make a decision based on the game that's being played now, not the game that was played 2 weeks ago. So that gear change happens, and it's happened with the 2 teams that are now ahead of us in the standings in our division. And tonight, it just, it blew up on us.
We'll go next to Scott Billick from the Winnipeg Sun. Go ahead, Scott.
Thanks, Gregor. Paul, do you need to take a scalpel to this? What's the road? What's the pathway out of it?
I don't understand the reference.
Sorry, to your lines, perhaps defensive pairings. Obviously, those changed a little bit in the third there. But what about the lines, forward lines? What do you have to do to get out of this? Do you have to move a guy out of the top 6?
So if you were thinking that it was this would be fundamental, it would not be, the line structure, a chemistry issue with the lines. They were completely changed here tonight. The decision process with the puck wasn't based on the combinations.
We'll go next to Murat Atesh from The Athletic. Go ahead, Murat.
Thanks, Gregor. Hi, Paul. You've referenced kind of a style of play change at this time of year a couple of times before, and now you're referencing that gear change that hasn't happened yet. If Edmonton and Toronto have made that change, what is it? Where does that come from? Is that a coaching thing? Is that a player's thing? What needs to happen from whom to make that shift?
It's an understanding of the way the game's changed. So the coach's responsibility is to make that clear and understood. And then we need to play that game. There's just too many pucks that were put into transition that didn't need to be put into transition because we're looking for something more. In each of these games, also, we're trailing the game. What we had done well, and again, it's a different game that's played at the start, but we had given up the first goal quite often early in the year and won an awful lot of those games by not changing. And I felt that, in these games that we've been behind recently, we just opened our game up. And certainly against, the offense that the last 2 teams we played have had, you just can't do it.
We'll go next to Ken Weeb from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Weaver.
Paul, what can you tell us about the timing of the goalie pull? Is it just you want to give Brossoit more time to get ready, or what goes into that decision?
It was enough. I didn't want Connor skating off the ice in that game because he's made a bunch of his. I didn't have him for any of them. I didn't want him coming off the ice during the period and making that skate. So after 2, he had enough work.
Thanks very much, Coach.
Okay, guys.
There he goes, Winnipeg Jets head coach Paul Maurice, after addressing the media earlier tonight, basically saying the Jets have not found the gear change necessary to compete with the teams ahead of them now in the standings in the North Division. I don't know what it's going to take then to find that gear change. And that's, I think, the biggest question for the Winnipeg Jets with the remainder of the regular season ahead of them is, when do they find that gear change? When do they realize that what they did through the first, 48, 49, 50 games of the regular season is just not going to be good enough anymore for the playoffs? I don't know that he knows the answer either. And that's why I think the biggest question that the Jets have heading into Wednesday night and then on the road trip afterwards.
Yeah, but like there's a lot of talk of gear change and cheating the game. Like let's just throw out all the cliches, guys. Like we mentioned it earlier. The Jets have to just get back to getting some more possession, getting some more sustained pressure, like having a really good shift where you're in the Oilers zone for a good 30 to 45 seconds, and with let's say the Scheifele line, and then the Dubois line comes over the boards, and they follow that up with a good shift. Like that's what I think that I feel like the way this team is talking. Like again, I mentioned it last 15 20 minutes ago, I forget how long ago, but like this is a playoff team. They're going to the playoffs, like that's what I'm talking about. I mean, like it's almost like we're talking about like a team that's dead last or second last in the division. It's been a bad homestand here, and you've lost to the teams that are ahead of you in the standings. But like if the thing that I'm the most worried about, Drew, is like there's all this talk like, are the Jets going to be able to beat the Oilers? Like if the Jets can't beat the Oilers, then let's not even go to the playoffs then. Do you know what I mean? Like what are we talking about? Like if the Jets can't beat the Oilers once, they've beaten them twice already this year, like then there are much bigger problems here with the confidence and the psyche of this team.
Well, I mean, everything about this team right now is fragile at best. And I don't know that, bringing Logan Stanley back in the lineup or taking Jordy Ben out is going to make any difference. We just seem to be sort of Paul Maurice also in terms of his coaching decisions. They just seem to be spinning their wheels. Everybody in this organization right now on this homestand, and that's not to say that it can't get better. And I mean, I don't think that they're going to lose out for the rest of the regular season or something like that. That would be
I don't
shocking to me. But they just seem to be spinning their wheels, and they're unable to pinpoint what needs to be fixed, or more importantly, how to fix it, Dave. How do they, what do they focus on tomorrow at practice? What do they focus on Thursday at practice in order to get things back on track for the remainder of the regular season, and to make sure they're playing with success being a possibility come playoff time?
Well, I'm old enough to remember, because it was a week ago, the rotation used to involve 3 players. It was supposed to be Jordy Ben, Logan Stanley, and a little guy named Ville Heinola.
Yeah, it's crazy that he's not in the lineup.
So I mean, we do remember. Like, it's funny how the rotation has become now from 3 players to 2 players. Again, is Ville Heinola going to solve every problem that your organization has? I don't think so. Can Ville Heinola come in there, be a smooth skating guy who can make a good first pass and is going to be able to handle, I think, what you're right now lacking, which is those clean breakouts? He seems to be able to do it. So to me, a guy like Ville Heinola, you throw him into that situation. Maybe he's the guy who gives you that help. But I mean, you know how you're not going to know? You're not going to know if you don't play Ville Heinola.
Or you play him one game.
Well, yeah, exactly. So to me, and again, I'm not saying Ville Heinola is going to come in here and erase all the Jets' issues. That obviously is not going to be the case. But I'm saying that if you can get a guy like that who has the talent that, again, one of the things about this Moose team, and I mentioned it. I agree with this for sure. There's got to be more likes for sure.
Yeah, good comment, Nobby Boo.
Oh no, and it's funny because it's funny. I talked to Pascal Vincent about this on Saturday after the Moose game. I said, "Is this the first time you've ever had 6 Jets draft picks in the lineup as defensemen? The entire defense was all Jets draft picks." And he said it was, and like I said, and then they lost Liam Gavanka, like I said, in the second period of that last game. But there's a lot of good young players, and again, I'm not one to rush, but I think Ville Heinola is probably able to handle. He played with men in the Finnish league. He can handle the adjustment to the NHL game. And again, we're never going to know that unless you give him that opportunity. And there's no point in not giving him that opportunity right now, simply because you're in a situation where, look, you're not catching Toronto for first. You may not even catch Edmonton for second. Not that matters really. So at the end of the day, you're probably going to be the third place team in I know some people are thinking the world is falling and the Jets are going to somehow lose to Calgary or whatever, but that's not happening. So the reality is you're finishing most likely third, possibly second. You're only 1 point back of Edmonton for second. But to me, with the games remaining, get those guys in the lineup. You know what you have with Jordy Ben. You know what you have with Derek Forbort. I mean, again, Derek Forbort didn't have a good game. How many times have we been able to say that now over the course? And Neil Pionk maybe is they formed a nice duo, but how much of that is Neil Pionk just being a very good defenseman and cleaning up some of the mistakes made by Derek Forbort? So again, I'm not trying to pick on a guy, but at the same time, it's been a number of games now that I've been able to say Derek Forbort has looked, slow. He hasn't looked confident. He's made errors in judgment. To me, again, he's best suited to be a third pairing guy. Ville Heinola, quick, fast, makes quick decisions. I mean, I jokingly said this when I was watching one of the Moose games earlier that he played, not today, but earlier in the season. He's like a guy who has eyes in the side of his head the way he sees things. His vision is that good. So to me, and I don't want to blow him up. I'm not saying he's like the next greatest defenseman and he's not winning the Norris tomorrow. I'm just saying he's a guy who could come in and maybe solve some of the problems that your team is having. So why not give him that opportunity? Now, I know there's a defensive bias. Paul Maurice talked about it. If you heard his availability earlier, right? He made a comment. If Jordy Ben has a really good game, I'm not taking him up. Right? Now, he didn't say it about Logan Stanley, but let's assume that same premise holds for Logan Stanley. Because his idea was to let one of these guys ride. Well, I mean, that makes it not realistic to think that Ville Heinola that he's going to actually get into a game simply because he's talking about Ben or Stanley, right? So
if you want to try things out, the numbers, and it's not a small sample size, it's a career's worth of numbers, say that Jordy Ben, and I can't believe that we're considering Jordy Ben almost as an answer to the problems for the team, but hear me out here, that Jordy Ben plays better when he plays on the right side, not when he plays on the left side. Well, if you want to try something else out, try something new, if you're experimenting at this point, then, I don't know why Tucker Poolman, Tucker Poolman's fine. He's not infallible. He's not guaranteed a roster spot or a spot in the lineup. But if you want to try something out and you want to keep Jordy Ben in the lineup, move him onto the right side, give Poolman a night off, give Poolman 2 nights off, and then bring Heinola in on your left side. And then maybe Heinola and Ben can be a pairing for the team. It just, constantly shuffling, to your point, as you before, constantly rotating Stanley and Ben isn't solving anything. All it's doing is making 2 players who have no confidence in their game, have no flow to their game, and have no rhythm in being in the lineup. I just don't quite understand why that is the rotation, the decision. What's he going to find by doing that game in and game out? This team needs. They almost need to go back to the drawing board in some respects. Now, you're a lot better off going to the drawing board when you're basically already mathematically guaranteed a playoff spot. So this isn't Chicken Little, the sky is falling. It's you're in a pretty big rut right now at a time you don't necessarily want to be in the rut. But this is where the coach that's been praised to the high heavens as one of the, everyone talks about him as a, everyone, I'm going to say externally, often from Winnipeg, external media sources outside of Winnipeg talk about Maurice as this wonderful head coach. Well, as far as I'm concerned, he's been outcoached by Dave Tippett recently. He's been outcoached by Sheldon Keefe recently. So this is the time, if he is this wonderful head coach, let's see it. Let's see what you're going to do as the head coach to get your team out of this pretty bad slump they're in right now.
We're talking about defensemen. We're talking about forwards, coaching. Like, at the end of the day, in 4 games at home, the Jets have been outscored 18-5. Okay, so like you're saying, the sky isn't falling here, but if it isn't falling, it appears that it is close to falling. And like Dave is mentioning Ville Heinola, like, again, guys, like nobody's going to disagree with that. Like, I would love to see Ville Heinola, right? And I feel like I'm going insane because we talk about this night after night, and to me that's not the issue. And that if you kind of see where I'm going here, guys, it's not one player, it's not defensemen, it's not forwards, it's not coaching, it's the team here. There's a problem with this team when you're outscored 18-5 in 4 games against the other 2 teams that you're going to have to beat to get out of your division. That is a team, like there's a lot, back to what we were saying before, there's when you can't pinpoint 1 or 2 problems and it's just everything, right? Like the forwards aren't scoring, the defensemen aren't defending, there's turnovers. Like, there's just so many things that are going wrong here that I think you have to look at it and simplify your game, and do whatever you have to do to get your game back to, even if it's 20% of what your game was before. Like, and again, it might just be me here, but having watched this team all year long, I realize that Connor Hellebuck can cover up some of the warts of your team, but I also can't help but notice that this team doesn't look like this. The confidence level is so low right now, and you can hear it in the comments from the players after the games. It really is. It's quite flabbergasting, really, considering how confident they've been most of the year. And I realize confidence is something that's very subjective and cliche and everything like that. But the Jets are forcing things. They just seem out of sorts and like they've lost their identity. There's a lot of talk in the chat about how they haven't found their identity. Like, I don't think it's that. I think that they've just lost their way here. And I think, back to my point, they have to do whatever they can to get back in the win column here. Like, I said, stop the bleeding, but I mean, they have to figure out how to get out of this as a team.
And, I was going to say, isn't it funny how we've talked about all the other teams went through this. Montreal went through this. Toronto has gone through this. Edmonton has gone through this. I mean, again, I think one of the things that's important to recognize is that you're not, first of all, it's too late to do anything insane. So people need to chill with you're not firing the coach. You're not making trades. Again, I get that people are upset. I get that you don't like to see what's happening, but you need to the real out there stuff needs to take it down a notch. I mean, I think it's, like I said, it's just got to be taken into account. Like I said, Toronto, before they came in here and kind of wiped the floor with the Jets, they hadn't won a game in 5. The Oilers have had similar problems. Again, I'm not saying that what's happening with the Jets is good. I'm not going to try and polish this turd, or turds, I should say. But at the same time, every team has gone through this in the Canadian division. All the playoff teams, I should say. So again, it's one of those things that it's incumbent on this team to break themselves out of this tailspin. I mean, I'd be surprised. What do you guys think in terms of the defensemen? Goaltending. Do you think Laurent Brossoit gets the last game and they give Connor Hellebuck some time off? He didn't pin the goals on Connor Hellebuck, but do you think they want to give Connor Hellebuck a little bit of time to rest, recover, find his game, and then give Laurent Brossoit, who's played well? I don't think he's given up a goal in a while, or maybe one goal. So Laurent Brossoit's played well. So I'm wondering if they'll start with him that next game in Edmonton. That might have, against Edmonton, that might have been the plan anyways, but why not? Just give him a chance, give Connor Hellebuck the opportunity to sit and kind of reset himself.
I'd be surprised. I understand where you're coming from there, though, Dave. I'd be surprised if they don't go back to Connor Hellebuck, because he wasn't great, but I don't think he was. As I said, he's far down on my list of problems. This, to me, just is so reminiscent of the year against St. Louis and the ruffled feathers. Remember that, there was sort of that tailspin, and then it was all about, things weren't right in the room and they couldn't get out of that tailspin.
And there was a players only meeting, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm sure there was. And then boom, they were out in the first round. There's parallels right now. Now, if they are able to, win on Wednesday, or if they're able to go out on the road and string some wins together before the end of the regular season, then things are better. But if this continues, boy, oh boy, the ruffled feathers from 2018 will look like something minor compared to how it's going to look this year. I strongly suspect.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we've been doing, the post-game show for over an hour now, and I'm almost still shocked at what I saw. Like, the fact that the Jets needed this win so badly coming off of those 3 losses at home. And, this is what happened. It's tough, guys. And we've been covering this team since they came over from Atlanta. Like, it's tough sometimes, Dave, to really make sense of what we just saw, right? Because yes, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are 2 of the best players in the world. Everybody knows that. But the Jets gave the puck away to those players, right? Like, so they made it easy for the Oilers, right? Like, so that's one of those things. Like, yes, if McDavid and Draisaitl beat you, and with skill, but you're defending the right way and everything like that. It's one thing, but when you're, Derek Forbort, and again, I don't want to pick on him, but that was the one, that was really particularly bad, that led to Nugent Hopkins and Draisaitl going up the ice. But then we talked about, like, there were so many turnovers, guys, in this game that it's hard to really keep track. Right, I think 3 or 4 of the 6 goals were directly the result of turnovers. Right, I'd have to go back and check that, but like this team was just not good enough, and it goes back to what I said before. They're just not generating enough offense. Like that's the thing that's the most concerning to me. Like we know Pierre-Luc Dubois hasn't been putting the puck in the net, Dave, but I think he's at least been getting chances. But you go up and down the lineup, like who's going to be the guy that like gets them out of this? It's got to be Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor. It has to be.
I'm more concerned about the person who just tweeted Illegal Curve saying, "Why am I wearing a mask if I'm at home?"
Yeah, I got rid of that. That guy's just a troll. I got rid of him.
I have a question. Does this look like my house? Like, honestly, like
you have a pretty good sized Jumbotron in your house and a large Canadian flag and apparently a 15,000 seat stadium.
I think, Dave, people think you've got the Hustler virtual background. It's not a virtual background.
I mean, like, people need to chill. Like, I know I have a nice home, but I don't think it's this nice. This is pretty. You know what? The truth is, I know people think that sometimes I sleep at Bell MTS Place because I'm here so much, but this is definitely not my house. So while I appreciate people thinking that's a possibility, maybe it's all that racehorse talk. It is not my residence, so that is not the fact. So
that guy won't be an issue anymore. He won't be a problem going on. I took a look at his Twitter feed, and he's not
our style.
Let me do this way. I think he was at the Forks yesterday, joining some of our fellow anti-mask morons in a bit of a rally.
Why are you wearing a mask in the middle of a global pandemic?
Well, I mean, I guess if I was at my house, I wouldn't be, but I'm clearly not at my house, which wouldn't take very long to deduce. And plus, also, it's a branded Illegal Curve mask. Sup. So that's also why I would be wearing it to do some promotion.
And while we're at it, Dave, smash that subscribe button and hit the like button.
Yes, absolutely.
We want to hit at least 350.
And for the record, I wasn't just homeless. If people think I was like living here, today was a personal first for me, a milestone, if you will. Yeah, I did what I've been wanting to do since 2015. The Moose game in the afternoon at the Iceplex, although ideally would have been here at the arena in the afternoon, followed by a Jets game. It's the first time I've ever done it. Wanted to do it. Glad they did it. And I actually think when all of this goes back to normal, and I'm hoping that's going to be soon, I hope they actually start incorporating that, because I think that it would be fantastic for people to be in the building, watch the Moose play in the afternoon on a Saturday or a Sunday, and then later that night watch the Winnipeg Jets play. I think it would be incredible if they could do it.
So what you're saying, Dave, is you're no longer a 45-year-old virgin?
Well, I'm not 45, so that definitely helps. And yes, I guess I'm not. Thank you, Drew.
You're welcome. On that, you set me up for it, and I had to hit the fastball over the fence because Lord knows I can't do it in our actual softball games. On that note, we thank everybody for joining us on this evening's Illegal Curve post-game show. We remind everyone that if you want more post-game talk, our buddies Kenny and Rennie, Ken Wiebe and Sean Reynolds, they're getting started, or they are already started with their post-game show on their YouTube channel, so you can go check that out. We want to give a big thank you to our sponsors, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Zappia Group Realty, Bernstein's Deli, and Boston Pizza. Support those fine local businesses because they support Illegal Curve Hockey. They make this post-game show a reality. They make Saturday's Illegal Curve Hockey show a reality. Thanks to all of you, of course, for joining us. It was certainly a spirited chat room tonight. On your way out, be sure, if you haven't already done so, smash that like button on your way out. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Be sure you join us each and every time. That's every time after every Jets game and Saturday mornings for the Illegal Curve Hockey show. For Dave Minuk, who's at his very fancy house that the taxpayers of Winnipeg were nice enough to pay for Ezra Ginsburg, who's in his basement, but also nice, but nobody's paying for that aside from Ezzy, I am your host, Drew Mandel. And until Wednesday night's post-game show, right around 10:30 p.m. on Wednesday night, we wish you good night and good luck.